I had this realization at the height of this experience that not only was I a fragment of source, I was source. And I remembered who I was, that I was source, and that everything was an extension of me, was me. And that for the first time in my life, I remembered who I was. And I was source, observing source, remembering that it's source. And the best way I can describe it is when you interact with someone or see someone who has dementia and they're interacting with a family member and you tell them, well, don't you recognize this person? This is your son or this is your brother, right? And the person's like, well, yeah, you do look familiar. And yeah, I've seen photos of you around the house. Like, I remember I have a son, right? And so the person's theoretically convinced that you're their relative. And so it's theory. But then there's this moment where all of a sudden it clicks and they remember, and then the emotion becomes embodied, that they remember that this person is their son. And then all of a sudden they remember who they are, and they remember that they're a mother, and that, you know, all these experiences and memories associated with being a mother. And that was the moment for me, this like embodied flip of remembering that I am source. And even that I chose this experience and how I chose this experience. And it was one of the most profound events in my life.
Well, you articulated it very well.
Well, thank you.
And it rang true.
Mhm.
It rang true because you described very beautifully what it must be to really experience consciousness at its source, and yourself as that source consciousness. Because, of course, the everyday experience we have as human beings is an experience which is a filtered experience. And by the sounds of it, all the filters were removed and you could experience consciousness directly. But because of our evolution through all the different life forms, we have to have this filtered experience in order to survive in the world.
And the filter being the ego?
But ultimately, the filter is the ego, but it's the different senses that are giving you information, incomplete information. For example, the bandwidth of light that we see is only very, very small. The wavelength that we hear is a very select wavelength. If it wasn't filtered, it would be overwhelming.